The alarm went off and another day blasted into existence. Kalen wasn't the kind of guy that lingered in bed. He permitted himself one good stretch, a decent yawn, and then got up without delay. Remnants of a dream still bounced around in his head, nonsensical and hazy. There were hooded maidens revealing visions of the future, or perhaps the past, and a beautiful blonde lady that turned into a giant hawk. He remembered them talking about something, paths to be chosen, decisions to be made, mysterious beasts, and some kind of evil darkness. So weird. He couldn't make any sense of it. Another crazy dream, he told himself, shaking his head, with a chuckle. It was already misty, fading away, as he headed to the bathroom. His dreams were so otherworldly sometimes. He wondered if other people had dreams like that. In all honesty, he kind of liked those dreams. Hopefully, it meant he had a creative mind, and, just maybe, he'd find a way of using that in his music. He dreamt of becoming a rock star someday. The whole subject was put to rest as Kalen washed his face. There was nothing like cold water to wipe away the sleepiness. Through the bathroom window, he could see a clear blue sky outside. Another hot day awaited him. Back in his room, he got out of his pajamas and into his jeans, a white t-shirt and some old sneakers. His room wasn't messy like most teenagers. He made his bed every day, he kept his books organized by author, his record collection in order by band, and his posters were all perfectly aligned on the wall. Dire Straits, Led Zeppelin, Tears for Fears, Creedence, Jefferson Airplane, Rolling Stones, The Beatles, Queen, and this new band he really enjoyed that no one knew about called Guns N' Roses. They were all there for inspirational purposes. He brushed his fingers through his hair in the mirror until it was properly messy. Like any normal teenager, he was never really pleased with his appearance, but at least he had made himself presentable for school. With his backpack and skateboard in hand, he headed out to the kitchen. He lived in a flat with his aunt. Every Monday morning he cooked breakfast for her. Nothing fancy, just some eggs and bacon, ham sandwiches or something like that. Monday was the only day of the week Valari, his aunt, had the morning off from the hospital, so he made an effort to cook her something nice. It was just the two of them and she worked long hours to make ends meet. Kalen felt a little guilty that he didn't help out more, but Valari didn't allow precociousness. From what little he knew of her childhood, it had been troubled and short. Clearly, she was determined not to let her nephew's life echo her own, especially considering his parents' death. She wanted him to have a good life, and she did all she could to be there for him. When he was little, she always managed to show up at his baseball games and school plays. He never understood how she did it, with her working hours and all. She was really great that way. While other kids were embarrassed of their mothers dropping them off at school, Kalen was extremely proud to have someone as cool as her in his life. Making her breakfast was the least he could do. Just then, he heard Valari calling out from her bedroom, "Kalen." "In the kitchen," he replied. "Hey kiddo, good morning," she said as she came into the kitchen, still in her baby blue pajamas. "Morning, Aunt Val," he greeted her, before offering pancakes. "Yes please," she answered, smiling fondly at him. She was a young aunt and she looked even younger than she actually was. Her 34 years were often mistaken for 24. Every now and then, a cash register girl or store attendant would ask if Kalen was her younger brother. The kind of relationship they had only served to reinforce the notion. She was very cheerful and youthful, while he was kind of overly responsible and sensible for his age. Whenever they went out together, shopping or whatever, they acted more like siblings. They both had the same light brown hair, though hers was long and swerved, and his was short and messy. Her bright brown eyes were distinctly different from his blue eyes though. The only feature that came from the father he never knew. Both him and Kalen's mother died in a car crash before his earliest memories. All he had of them was a handful of old crumpled up photos. There was this one photo with the three of them, he was just a baby. On the back was a handwritten note, Kalen's first time at the park, June 5, 1971. That was the year he was born, he was less than a year old in that photo. They were a good-looking family, a feature that was present in Valari as well. At PTAs, some of the mothers glared at her, as if she would spirit away their husbands. It was hilarious. Thankfully, Valari was too enlightened a person to let silliness like that get to her. Sometimes, it seemed there was nothing that could bring her down. In fact, the only thing that ever seemed to wipe the smile off her face was asking about her past. She was generally very open for discussion. Even the dreaded sex talk had been relatively free of awkwardness. Her early years, however, were very much so taboo. And Kalen really hated seeing his aunt's lovely face go sour, so he avoided the subject as best he could. In fact, he did his best to help her in whatever way possible. In the end, he was a little precocious, whether Valerie allowed it or not. It couldn't be helped. Growing up parentless wasn't exactly a walk in the park. She did her best, but he inevitably learned to look after himself at a very early age. Kalen served her with a pile of pancakes and sat down himself. She poured some syrup over the melting butter, and they began to eat. "I love your pancakes," she commented, then asked casually, "So, how are things at school?" "We haven't talked about school in a while." She wasn't really worried about grades or anything like that. He was a decent student. However, his social life had always been a bit lacking, in her opinion. "It's okay, I guess," he shrugged. "What about the girls?" She pushed the subject as charmingly as possible. He hesitated, then asked, "What girls?" There was one. She searched her memory for the name. "Sam, right? Samantha." "Samantha Powell, yeah," he acknowledged indifferently. "What about her?" "Hey, don't act so coy," she insisted. "I thought you were into her and all that jazz." "What happened?" "Nothing," he explained plainly. "I never said I was into her. I just said she was gorgeous, which she is, which means that even if I were into her, she's totally out of my league. She's only into the jockeys, thus not me." "Well, that's her loss," she commented indignantly, before insisting, "I'm sure there are plenty of cute girls that aren't just interested in jockeys." "None that I can think of," Kalen reported. "I see." Valerie restrained a giggle. "Well, with your looks, there's bound to be a girl in the mix sooner or later." "Yeah, sure, Aunt Val." Kalen blushed, rolled his eyes, and quickly changed the subject. "By the way, I'm rehearsing at Soren's tonight again. Is that okay?" "Sure," she nodded. "You guys are really taking this band thing seriously, aren't you? You rehearse just about every day now." "Yeah. Actually, Sona's the one who forces us to show up every day." Kalen chuckled. "It's practically slavery. But I like playing, so I don't really mind. Soren pitches a fit sometimes, but I think it's more of a brother-sister thing. He likes playing just as much as I do. I think we're getting kinda good at it actually. When will I get to see you guys play?" She wondered excitedly. "Never," he replied defensively. "Never?" she protested. He reconsidered. "Well, maybe someday, but not now." "Why the hell not?" she demanded, her hands at her hips. "I dunno. It's just, I don't think I'm ready for that yet," he admitted honestly. "Just thinking about it makes my stomach recoil. We've just started over the summer. It's just way too soon." "Well, don't keep hiding away for too long," she warned, sitting up in a proud and slightly threatening manner. "You know me well enough to know that I will see you play eventually." "Right," he sighed, with a fearful smile. "I'll keep that in mind. You should play in those school dances," she teased him. "Just think of the crowd of shrieking girls." "Or flying tomatoes," Kalen added sarcastically. "You know, it's funny, but Sona said the same thing, that we should play at school sometime. She thinks it should be like our first goal as a band. I'm not so sure though. Public humiliation at school is something I really don't need right now." "What humiliation?" she argued. "You'll do great. Remember how well you did in the Halloween play. You're a natural on stage." "Aunt Val, that was a play and I was 12," he reminded her. "This is totally different." "How is it totally different?" she pressed. "You're performing on stage, there's a crowd, you memorize lines." "Well, for one thing, playing the guitar is a lot harder than just memorizing lines," he argued, "and I'd have to memorize lyrics as well to sing, so it's like holy schultz." Okay, I get it," said Valerie, backing off. "It's a lot of hard work. I just don't want you to be too afraid of trying. That's all." She stood up and hugged him. "Well," he said, in a tone of finality, "I better get going." "Later, Aunt Val." "Later, kiddo," she replied fondly. "Oh, and thanks for the pancakes." Kalen smiled at her, got his backpack and headed for the door. She followed him. With one last goodbye wave at her, he jumped on his skateboard and rolled off to school. She sometimes offered to take him, but he never accepted. He preferred to let her rest, and the trip itself was kind of pleasant anyway. New Haven was a nice place to live for the most part. A lot of trees and parks and not a lot of traffic, at least not on the path he took to school. He lived in a small flat on Mansfield Street, and Hilton High was only a couple of blocks away. It was a nice neighborhood and one he knew well. He had lived there all his life and didn't really think of leaving it anytime soon.